Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why some people can come from nothing and rise to greatness, while others remain stuck in the same cycle year after year? Have you noticed that two people can go through the same hardship, one grows from it, while the other is destroyed by it? It is not your situation that determines your future, it is your mindset. Nothing changes until your mind changes. Not your finances, not your relationships, not your opportunities, nothing. You can move to a new city, but if your mind is still trapped in old thinking, you will recreate the same struggles. You can start a new job, but if your mind remains the same, you will experience the same frustrations. You can enter a new relationship, but if you don't change your thinking, you will repeat the same mistakes. Everything in life flows from the mind, and today I came to tell you that if you want a different future, you must first change the way you think. The greatest war you will ever fight is not in the world around you. It is in your mind. Your mind is the control center of your life. Everything you do, everything you say, everything you become is a product of your thinking. If the enemy can capture your mind, he doesn't need to take anything else, because once he has your thoughts, he has your future. That is why the fiercest battles are not fought on battlefields with swords and guns. They are fought in the mind with doubt, fear, insecurity, and deception. Look at your life right now. Every limitation you see, every struggle you face, every barrier that seems to hold you back, it is not rooted in your circumstances. It is rooted in your mindset. You are not limited by your environment. You are limited by the way you think about your environment. You are not restricted by your past. You are restricted by your perception of your past. That is why the most dangerous thing in life is not the challenges you face, but the lies you believe about yourself. The Bible declares in Proverbs 23:7, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." That means you are not what people say about you. You are not what your situation suggests. You are not even what your emotions tell you. You are the sum total of your dominant thoughts. If you think like a failure, you will live like one. If you think like a victim, you will behave like one. But the moment you start thinking like a victor, the chains of defeat will begin to break. Some of you are praying for a breakthrough, but your mind is still in bondage. You are asking God to bless you, but your thoughts are still filled with lack. You are hoping for a better future, but your thinking is still trapped in yesterday's failures. How can God elevate you when your mind is still crawling in the dirt of doubt? How can He take you to the next level when your mindset is still stuck in the last mistake? Do you know why the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years? It wasn't because God couldn't take them to the promised land. It was because their minds were still in Egypt. They had been delivered physically, but mentally they were still slaves. They saw themselves as grasshoppers, though God had already called them conquerors. They cried about food, they complained about hardship, they doubted God's promises, not because He was unfaithful, but because their thinking was still shaped by their past. And as a result, they stayed stuck. How many of us are stuck? Not because of the enemy, not because of other people, but because our minds refuse to move forward. You keep speaking about your dreams, but your thoughts contradict your words. You desire success, but your mind is still rehearsing failure. You are asking for more, but you are thinking too small. If you do not change your mindset, even when God opens doors, you will be too afraid to walk through them. Even when opportunities come, you will sabotage yourself with doubt. Even when the blessing arrives, you will mishandle it because your thinking has not been renewed. That is why the Apostle Paul commands us in Romans 12:2, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Notice that it does not say, "Be transformed by changing your location." It does not say, "Be transformed by getting a new job." It does not say, "Be transformed by waiting for someone to help you." No! It says, Be transformed by renewing your mind. In other words, transformation does not come from the outside. It starts from the inside. If you want a new season, you need a new mindset. If you want new opportunities, you need new thinking. If you want to rise to the next level, you must first elevate your thoughts. Because the truth is, nothing changes until your mind changes. Everything in your life today is a direct result of how you have been thinking. Your mind is the architect of your destiny. Your thoughts shape your beliefs shape your actions, and your actions shape your reality. If you want to change your life, you must first change the way you think, because nothing in your life happens by accident. Your mind has been constructing the reality you are living in right now. Look around you. Every decision you have made, every habit you have formed, every opportunity you have taken or ignored has been filtered through your mindset. You do not rise above the level of your thinking. If your mind is small, your life will be small. If your thoughts are filled with fear, your life will be filled with hesitation. If your mindset is one of mediocrity, you will never experience greatness. But the moment you expand your thinking, your world will expand with it. That is why the Bible says in Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life. Your heart, your inner being, your mind is the source of everything you experience. Your financial struggles are not just about money. They are about your relationships are not just about the people in your life. They are about how you think about yourself and others. Your career is not just about your skills. It is about your belief in your own potential. Everything flows from the mind. A poor man and a wealthy man can receive the same amount of money, but in a few years, one will be broke again and the other will have multiplied what he received. Why? Because money does not change a person, it only reveals their mindset. A person with a poverty mentality will mismanage resources, but a person with an abundance mindset will turn little into much. The issue is never the resource. The issue is the mind that manages it. That is why some people remain stuck even when opportunities come. They think the problem is their circumstances, but the real problem is their thinking. You can take a person out of the ghetto, but if their mind is still in the ghetto, they will recreate the same conditions wherever they go. You can give someone a better job, but if their thinking is still small, they will never rise to leadership. Until your mind shifts, your life cannot shift. When God wanted to bless Abraham, he told him, look up at the stars. As many as you can see, so shall your descendants be. Why? Because Abraham's mindset had to change before his circumstances could change. God knew that as long as Abraham thought small, he would live small. So God expanded his vision before he expanded his reality. The same is true for you. If you can't see it in your mind, you will never hold it in your hand. This is why Romans 12:02 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice the word transformed. That means your life can change, but not until your mind changes. Your transformation is not waiting on your background, your family, or even your circumstances. It is waiting on your mindset. The moment you decide to shift your thinking, everything in your life will begin to align. Because the truth is, nothing changes until your mind changes. Some of you are not trapped by your circumstances, you are trapped by your past. Not by chains, not by walls, but by the memories you refuse to release. You keep looking back, replaying what happened, reliving the mistakes, rehearsing the pain. But I came to tell you today, the past is a place of reference, not residence. You are not supposed to live there. You are not supposed to be held hostage by what happened yesterday. If you keep holding on to what was, you will never step into what could be. Your past does not define you, your mindset does. The enemy knows he cannot take your future, so he tries to imprison you in your history. He whispers, remember when you failed? Remember when they hurt you? Remember when you made that mistake? And if you believe Him, you will stay stuck in a season that God has already called you out of. That is why Paul said in Philippians 3:13, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. You cannot reach for the future while you are still holding on to the past. You cannot step into destiny while you are still bound by yesterday. Some of you are still carrying wounds from years ago. You are still defining yourself by a failure that God has already forgiven. You are still allowing a broken relationship to determine your worth. But let me ask you, how long will you let your past rob you of your future? How long will you let an old chapter keep you from writing a new one? How long will you allow a mistake to dictate your identity? Look at Moses. He was called to be a deliverer, but after one mistake, one act of anger, he ran into the wilderness for 40 years. For 40 years, he allowed his failure to define him. For 40 years, he believed that what he did was who he was. But when God found him, He did not call him a murderer. He did not call him a failure. He called him by his destiny. He said, Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. Because God never consults your past to determine your future. He does not call you by what you did. He calls you by what He placed inside you. Some of you have been running from your calling because of what happened yesterday. You believe that because you fell, you cannot rise again. But Proverbs 24:16 says, a righteous man falls 7 times and rises again. Falling does not make you a failure. Staying down does. It is not what happened to you that defines you. It is what you do next. Will you stay stuck or will you rise? Will you keep looking back or will you move forward? Israel spent 400 years in Egypt, but even after they were free, their minds were still in slavery. They feared the future because they were too familiar with the past. They longed for Egypt because they did not yet know who they were. And because of their thinking, an entire generation died in the wilderness. They were not defeated by Pharaoh. They were defeated by their own minds. And the same will happen to you if you do not renew your thinking. You are not what happened to you. You are not your failures. You are not your past. If you keep identifying with yesterday, you will forfeit what God has for you today. Your history is not greater than your destiny. Your mistakes are not greater than God's mercy. Your failures are not greater than your future. But nothing will change until your mind changes. Many of us pray for a breakthrough, but our minds are still in bondage. We ask God for more, but we still think in limitation. We cry out for a new season, but we carry the mindset of the last season, and then we wonder why things don't change. Listen to me carefully. God will never give you what your mind is not prepared to receive. Until your thinking shifts, your life cannot shift. Until your mind is renewed, your situation will remain the same. Look at the children of Israel. God had already declared them victorious. He had already given them the land. The promise was already spoken, but when they saw the giants, their minds betrayed them. They said, we are like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in theirs. Notice the order. They did not say the giants saw them as weak first. They saw themselves as weak, and then the enemy saw them the same way. Your own perception of yourself determines how the world will respond to you. If you think small, you will live small. If you see yourself as a victim, you will always be defeated. If you believe you are unworthy, you will never receive the blessings God has for you. God cannot give a kingdom to someone with a slave mentality. He cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. He cannot trust you with greatness if your mind is still stuck in mediocrity. That is why some doors have not opened yet. That is why some opportunities have not manifested yet. It is not because God is withholding them. It is because your mind is not yet ready to handle them. You can pray for a business, but if your mind is still bound by fear, you will never take the risk to start it. You can ask God for a healthy relationship, but if you still think like someone who is broken, you will sabotage every good thing He sends. You can desire financial increase, but if your mindset is still trapped in poverty, you will waste what you receive. Your mind must change before your circumstances can change. Faith is not just believing in God. Faith is believing what God said about you. Faith is not just waiting for a miracle. Faith is preparing your mind for what you have been praying for. That is why Romans 12:02 says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Transformation is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens within you. The moment your thinking changes, your life will follow. Abraham had to see himself as a father before Isaac could be born. David had to think like a king before he ever wore a crown. Joseph had to carry the vision of a ruler even while he was still in prison. Because God does not wait for your circumstances to align before He calls you. He speaks to you according to the future He has designed. The question is, will you align your thinking with what God has already declared? Some of you are standing at the edge of destiny, but your mind is holding you hostage. You see the promise, but your fear of failure keeps you from stepping into it. You see the opportunity, but your insecurities whisper that you are not enough. You see the open door, but your past experiences make you hesitate. You cannot enter into a new season with an old mindset. You cannot possess the land if you still think like a slave. You cannot walk in victory if you still see yourself as defeated. If you want to step into what God has for you, you must change your mind. If you want to receive what He has already promised, you must let go of the old ways of thinking. If you want to break free from cycles of struggle, you must renew your perspective. Because the truth is, nothing changes until your mind changes. Everything God has for you is already set in place. Your destiny is not something that needs to be created. It has already been finished in eternity. The plans, the purpose, the resources, the opportunities, they are waiting for you. But here is the truth. You will never step into what God has prepared until your mind is ready to receive it. God will not give you what your mind rejects. He will not promote you beyond the level of your thinking. He will not place you in a position you are not mentally prepared to handle. The issue is not whether God is ready. The question is, are you ready? Some of you have been asking for a new season, but your mindset is still conditioned by the last one. You are praying for God to enlarge your territory, but your thinking is still small. You are asking for the doors to open, but your mind is still locked in fear. Listen to me. God does not respond to wishes. He responds to preparation. He does not pour abundance into a vessel that is too small to contain it. He does not release greatness into a person who still thinks like a failure. That is why the enemy's greatest attack is on your mind. Because if he can keep you thinking small, he can keep you living small. When the Israelites left Egypt, they were physically free, but mentally they were still slaves. They cried out for deliverance, but when they faced a challenge, they wanted to go back to Egypt. Why? Because their minds had not changed. They had prayed for freedom, but they had not prepared for responsibility. They wanted the promised land, but they were still thinking like captives. And because their thinking did not change, their reality did not change. An entire generation wandered in the wilderness, not because God had not prepared the promise, but because they were not prepared to possess it. How many of us are walking in circles, waiting on God, when He is actually waiting on us? You think the delay is external, but it is internal. You think the problem is outside of you, but it is inside of you. Your mind is the key that unlocks your next level. If you cannot see yourself walking in purpose, you will never take the steps to fulfill it. If you cannot see yourself breaking the cycle, you will keep repeating it. If you cannot see yourself as a conqueror, you will live as a victim. Your mind must shift before your life can shift. Jesus said in Mark 2:22, "No one pours new wine into old wineskins. Why? Because the old wineskins do not have the capacity to handle what is being poured. Some of you are asking for new wine, but your mind is still an old wineskin. You are asking for a new season, but you're still holding on to old ways of thinking. You are asking for an increase, but you are still operating with a mindset of limitation. You are asking for change, but you are resisting transformation. And until your mind is renewed, you will not be able to hold what God is trying to give you. Faith is not just believing that God can do it. Faith is preparing for it. Faith is expanding your thinking to match what God has spoken. Faith is enlarging your capacity so that when the blessing comes, you do not waste it. When God spoke to Abraham, he told him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are. In other words, your reality does not change until your vision changes. Your circumstances do not shift until your mind shifts. Your destiny does not manifest until your thinking aligns with it. The time for small thinking is over. The time for excuses is over. The time for hesitation is over. God has already prepared the promise. The question is, will you prepare your mind? Because the truth is, nothing changes until your mind changes. The difference between those who rise and those who remain stuck is not opportunity, it is mindset. Two people can hear the same message, yet one is transformed while the other remains the same. Two people can walk through the same door, yet one flourishes while the other fails. The difference is not what they encountered, it is how they think, because nothing changes until your mind changes. You cannot step into a new future with an old way of thinking. You cannot break free while still holding on to the chains of the past. You cannot receive more while still thinking in lack. The greatest battle you will ever fight is not in your circumstances. It is in your mind. If you win that battle, nothing can stop you. God has already placed greatness inside of you. He has already given you the promise, the potential, the purpose. But He will not force you to change your mind. That is your responsibility. The moment you decide to shift your thinking, everything in your life will follow. The moment you refuse to settle, refuse to shrink, refuse to be bound by old patterns, your world will open up in ways you never imagined. So I challenge you today, elevate your thinking, break the mental barriers, renew your mind daily, see yourself the way God sees you, walk in confidence, in boldness, in purpose, because the life you are waiting for is waiting on you. And the moment your mind shifts, your future begins. Good luck, and thank you.